We'll give it just a moment and then we will start our meeting. But welcome to those who are joining us. You're in the Crescenta Valley Water District Virtual Town Hall meeting. I'm Justin Glover with Communications Lab, and our team is assisting Crescenta Valley Water District with community outreach, and I'll be your moderator for today's meeting. And as we're waiting for folks to join us, I'm going to give it maybe another minute or so and to make sure folks can join. And then I'd like to play a welcome video, which provides some good information on Crescenta Valley Water District and how it serves customers. So in about another minute, we'll start that video. And thank you to everyone who took time to join us today. And I think for our Zoom tech, probably in the next few seconds, we can get that welcome video started, and then we'll see if we get other folks join the meeting.
Crescenta Valley Water District, or CVWD, is located along the foothills of the San Gabriel and Verdugo Mountains, between the San Fernando and San Gabriel valleys in Los Angeles County. The district provides water distribution and sewage collection to the unincorporated communities of La Crescenta, as well as parts of the cities of La Cañada Flint Ridge and Glendale. The district serves an area of about 4 square miles and ranges in elevation from 1,200 feet to almost 3,000 feet above sea level. The customer base is primarily residential, with some light commercial accounts. The district currently provides water and sewer service to more than 8,000 accounts, representing a population of approximately 33,000. Crescenta Valley Water is a special district governed by a board of directors who reside within the district's boundaries and are elected for a 4-year term as part of the state's general election. The district has a long history of providing reliable water and wastewater services. While a lot has changed in the area since the district was founded in 1950, the district still maintains its commitment to the Crescenta Valley community. The district pumps groundwater, a local resource, from the Verdugo Basin, which is located about 200 feet below the ground surface. Water production out of the Verdugo Basin is highly dependent on replenishment from local rainfall, which may take up to 1.5 years to fully infiltrate into the basin. The district has seen a reoccurring drought over the last 15 years that has depleted this valuable local resource, requiring it to supplement its water supply with additional imported water from Foothill Municipal Water District. CVWD purchases about 50% of its water supply from Foothill Municipal Water District, which purchases water from the Metropolitan Water District of Southern California, or MWD. MWD obtains imported water from Northern California, nearly 400 miles away, and from the Colorado River, about 300 miles away from the CVWD service area. The district and other water suppliers throughout Southern California face an increasing growing number of issues that directly impact CVWD's ability to provide reliable water service now and in the future. These issues include growing deferred facility maintenance and infrastructure replacement, rising imported water costs, increasing construction costs, continued drought, and climate change, expanding regulatory costs, escalating operation and energy costs. To address these issues, the district completed a strategic planning process, which established specific goals for CVWD to address these concerns today and in the future. Through vigorous planning and implementation, the district continues to move forward to accomplish its mission to its customers and stakeholders, to provide quality water and wastewater services to the Crescenta Valley community in a dependable and economically responsible manner. CVWD also strives towards its vision to secure sustainable water supplies and ensure infrastructure reliability, while furthering our commitment to accountability, transparency, and cost effectiveness.
Thank you, Martin. our Zoom tech for playing that great video. Welcome back to the Crescenta Valley Water District Virtual Town Hall meeting. As I shared before, I'm Justin Glover with Communications Lab. Our team's assisting Crescenta Valley with community outreach, and I'll be your moderator for today's meeting. I want to take just a moment to go over some housekeeping items, and then I'll be bringing up our speakers. First, I want to let you know our meeting today is being recorded. Also want to let you know this meeting is for you. We want you to participate. So during the presentation, camera and mics are off, but we will open those up at the end of the presentation during the Q&A session, and we'll recognize you using the raise hand feature. If you think of a question or comment during the presentation, just jot it down or place it in the Q&A and we'll address it at the end. This meeting's captioned, so you can click the captions button at the bottom of your Zoom interface if you need to use that feature. So now let's introduce today's presenters. We have a presenter slide. Nim Ochoa is our general manager. You'll be hearing from him. James Lee will be giving the bulk of our presentation today. I'm Justin Glover, your moderator. And then Christy Colby and Brooke Yard are going to be assisting us during the Q&A portion of the meeting. Next up, what I'd like to do is ask our general manager, Nim Ochoa, to give us a welcome.
Hello and welcome. I'm Nim Ochoa, general manager at Crescenta Valley Water District. I've been in this role since 2018, and I'm grateful to be in this position to serve this wonderful community. I am a native of Southern California, a water resource engineer by training, and a registered civil engineer with the state of California. That means our mission to deliver safe and reliable drinking water is of the utmost importance to me. Today you're going to hear a presentation from our team about how we're keeping our promise to the community and how we're planning for the future, which also means planning for rising infrastructure costs and the impacts of climate change. You hear about our aging water and sewer infrastructure, some of which goes back to the 1950s, prompting a need for a deliberate plan and the execution of that plan to ensure reliable water service is achievable now and in the future. You hear about where your water comes from and how the district is able to keep our faucets running, toilets flushing, and our fire hydrants pressurized, ready to provide fire suppression 24/7. You'll also hear about a plan to fund the costs directly associated with replacing old pipelines and ensuring our water system can be relied on to provide safe drinking water under all scenarios and support an emergency response in the wake of a wildfire or an earthquake. This funding plan is critical to the mission of the district and will be asking the community for its valued input. We're glad you joined us today, and at the end of our presentation, I'll be joined by our team to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Nim, for that. We appreciate it. Now, let's get right into it. It's time to bring up James Lee, who's going to be giving our presentation today. Thank you, James.
Thank you, Nim and Justin. I'd also like to welcome you all here today, and to those of you, some familiar faces in the crowd, I'd like to welcome you back. My name is James Lee. I'm the Director of Finance and Administration here at Crescenta Valley Water. I've been here since 2017, so a little bit longer than Nim. And I come from a finance background. I was a consultant for many years, but my training, my education, and really my passion, what led me to public service is public policy. And when we talk about policy, the common question that always comes up is, how do we provide the most benefit for the public, in this situation, the community? And the reason why I'm here today is because if we're going to make an ask to the community, especially one of financial consideration, and today what we're talking about specifically is infrastructure reliability, and more specifically pipelines, then it behooves us to have that conversation with you, the public, to explain exactly what it is, why are we doing this, why the route that we're proposing is the best route, and explain the steps along the way. Okay, so who are we and what do we do? So mission, to provide quality water and wastewater services to the Crescenta Valley community in a dependable and economically responsible manner. Vision, so secure sustainable water supplies and ensure infrastructure reliability while furthering our commitment to accountability, transparency, and cost effectiveness. So what informs our mission and vision, right? So in our case, it's the strategic plan. The latest iteration was completed last year in 2022, and you see here two of the most overarching goals. So reliable water and wastewater service, ensure infrastructure reliability and performance. There you see it again. It's basically straight out of the vision statement. And goal, fiscal responsibility, and kind of under that is to improve financial stability. So this document, it's on our website along with all manner of other documents. We have, policy, planning, engineering, finance, budget, all type of documents. And I encourage you all to go take a look. Where did this all start? The district was formed, just a quick history. The district was formed in 1950. It was a combination of seven private water companies. So for those of you whose families have been in the community for a number of generations, you might recognize some names like Cresta Heights Mutual Water Company, Dunsmore Canyon Water Company, Mountain Water Company. And these all came together, like I said, in 1950 under a public charter from the state of California to become Crescenta Valley Water District. It was called Crescenta Valley County Water District at the time, but it's CVWD today. And then in 1979, that's when we added the wastewater collection services. And here's some interesting documents that we dusted off from the archives. I believe what we're looking at here is well-logged data from the 1920s. I just thought it'd be interesting for you to take a look at. But the district's come a long way since then, right? There's a nice and welcome to the community that was installed several years ago on Foothill Boulevard. And there's a lot of moving parts to make sure that we can supply clean, reliable water. So, like I said, there's a lot of moving parts, and let's start with water supply. And we're going to kind of go through these quickly, but just again, so you get an idea of what we're talking about. And a lot of you will know this just because, as you know, with the falling availability of water, with drought, things like that, it's been all over the news, both in the state and nationally, but particularly in the state and really in the Southern California basin as well. But we have three primary sources of water. First one is the State Water Project. It comes down from the Sierras and the Sacramento Delta. And if you trace that line down there in that picture there, you can see the pipeline goes all the way from up there, all the way down to Metropolitan, which is our wholesaler, and through Foothill, and comes to us. We have a secondary source, the Colorado River, also been in the news a lot. So you have Lake Mead, it falls down through Hoover Dam, makes its way all over here. That's our second source. And then we have our groundwater. So going to this next slide here, here's some pictorial representations. That's the State Water Project right there on the left. You see Lake Mead dammed up by Hoover Dam right there. And then over here, that's our community. And so that purple circle right there, that's right along Honolulu. And just topographically, that's kind of where the water will percolate into our basins. And so it's just most advantageous for our wells to be there. It's most optimized there. And that's why they're there. All right, so what do we do with all this water supply? We got to treat this water. We got to make sure it's safe to drink. Hopefully it tastes pretty good. We think it tastes pretty good. But there's a number of ways to do this. We can either remove things from the water, we can blend it with other sources of water, or we can treat it, right? Where we have chemicals, a number of chemicals that we put in there, and we put just the right amount so that by the time it gets up to the reservoirs and down to your tap, the most of those chemicals are gone, right? So that it tastes good and the water is perfect. And there's a lot that goes into this, right? There's pictures, those are analyzers right there. They're set up all throughout our distribution system. There's sensors, there's alarms, everything that really measures everything to the most minute tolerances. And all of this, basically on a weekly, monthly basis, there are just hundreds of samples that are taken of water. And they're sent to laboratories across the state, and then the results are sent to the state itself. The state signs off on these, and ultimately, at the end of the year, we produce an annual water quality report that you probably receive in the mail every year. It's also posted on our website. This page right here with all these numbers is just one page from that. But you can appreciate the amount of effort that goes into making sure that you have safe, reliable, good tasting water. Once we treat that water, it's got to go somewhere. And so we're talking about water storage. And the district has 17 reservoirs, believe it or not. You don't really see them. There's 14 of them are steel, 3 of them are concrete. Together, they can hold 17.5 million gallons of water. And we always try to maintain them at a minimum where we can supply at least 5 to 7 days of water in the event of emergency. We've worked in the recent past on seismically retrofitting our reservoirs. I believe most of them are, I think 10 of them are seismically retrofitted. And right now we're actually working on a program such that in the event of a fire or earthquake, we can have every resident assigned to a specific reservoir so that they can then have a reliable source of potable water in the event of emergency, right? Because in those situations, whether I can get water or not is the last thing that I want to worry about. At the same time, being able to store that much potable water in all of our homes it's kind of a big task. You have to imagine like all of these five-gallon jugs that we're keeping at home just for this kind of event, and then refreshing them and all that kind of stuff. So now we need to get the water from the reservoirs to the homes, and there's three primary components to this. The pictures there, those are booster pumps. These are big engines, a lot of horsepower, and they basically pump the water from where it's treated all the way up to the reservoirs. And the reservoirs, of course, are going to be higher in elevation so that they can use gravity to flow down. So that's one component. Another component is what's called SCADA. So SCADA is a technology where our system operators can monitor the system 24/7, not only from a water quality standpoint, but water pressure, where it's going, and all of that, right? How much are our reservoirs filled, and we really call that the brains of the operation. And the third component to that is pipelines. It's the water distribution system. And there's about 95 miles of pipeline to maintain, right? Like I bet you didn't know that there were that many miles of pipeline underneath the ground in our community. Now pipelines are at the heart of what we're talking about today. So please hold on to that thought for a minute. I alluded to emergency preparedness earlier, and this is such a critical component to our service, not only to individual homes, but to first responders within the community and regionally. And this is a whole separate conversation. We can spend hours on this topic. But just as an overview, we're continuously maintaining a whole myriad of assets just to make sure that in the event of an emergency, we can provide service, right? So we have a number of generators, both portable and stationary. We mentioned the seismic retrofitting, all the analyzers. We have a plan. We have an emergency response plan in place. One of the unsung heroes in terms of all this is fire hydrants. You see them all around the place, and we take them for granted. We have 651 fire hydrants in our service area, and we have 2 fire stations servicing our service area. And our maintenance crew pretty much spend all year maintaining these fire hydrants so that they're functional, they have the right amount of pressure, they can open up, the valves that service them, they can open up, they're working, and all that stuff. Customer support. And when we start talking about customer support, there's a whole ecosystem of service that goes into, we talk about, we get the water, we treat it, we store it, we get it to your tap. That's all one process, but what happens after that? What happens when you have a question about your billing? What happens when there's a leak? Our maintenance crew are available 24/7, very fast response time. And because community stewardship, that's an aspect of it too, right? You see us out there, National Night Out. You see us out there for the Hometown Country Fair. That's Wendy Holloway there at the Hometown Country Fair. She's since retired, and we miss her. But again, kind of like emergency preparedness, that's a whole nother discussion. But just wanted to share that so you understand the 360 of the service that we provide. What we're looking to fund here is infrastructure reliability, but it's specifically pipelines. And why is this so important? The reason is because it's really simple. The reason is because pipelines really represent the backbone of our infrastructure, right? We could have all of the water in the world. It could be treated to the highest standards, which it is anyway. But without the pipelines, there's no water going to the homes. So for some of you who have been in the community for some time, you may have heard of, there's this bridge. It's a little bit north of Azusa. It was built in the 1930s, and it's unfinished, and it's called the Bridge to Nowhere. And it's kind of analogous to that, right? You can have all this infrastructure, all this great water, but without the pipeline, it's not going anywhere, and we're not sustaining life, we're not providing health and human safety, which is part of our basic mission here. And you know, the distribution system, it's not just about each endpoint, which represents each home. It's actually part of a whole system, right? As an example, for example, we could have a reservoir that goes down for whatever reason. Maybe it's getting recoded or rehabbed or whatever the case may be. We could have a valve that's broken, so it gets stuck because there's rust or it's been in the ground too long, it just breaks off or something. But if you have a distribution system that's reliable, you can actually work around these issues. And so that's why it's paramount that we be able to maintain this distribution system, which is made up of pipelines. So we've always recognized this need, right? And it's always been a balance of the financial impact to the community versus how much can we defer this maintenance? How much can we defer, you know, actually really wrapping our arms around infrastructure reliability? But you know, in 2019, thereabouts, there came a point where we just, you know, we couldn't not do more anymore, if you know what I mean. And so we really had to sit down, sharpen our pencils, and come up with a plan. And you know, that's all we did. It's a difficult conversation. You can imagine having deferred things for decades. That's not an easy conversation. I'm sharing a couple of tables here. I'm not going to go into it. You know, the point of it is really to just show you that there's a lot of smart people, you know, at the district who are crunching numbers and really figuring things out, looking at this sideways, upside down, left and right? For example, we broke the pipeline down by age, by number of leaks, by size. What's not on here is the material, the kind of soil compaction, all types of variables we looked at. And we looked, you know, we came up with, we said, so one of the results of that was, you know, what is a pipeline age? And if you look at that third bar, the biggest bar there, most of our pipe in the ground is about 50 to 60 years old. And we have a significant amount that's older than that, right? So 70 years old, 7 years plus. I think our oldest pipe is, it's either 92 or 96 years old. And that's directly a function of how a lot of our country was built. A lot of this country's infrastructure, at least west of the Mississippi, was done in the 1950s and 60s, right? And so that infrastructure is coming due. And the issue with this is the average useful life of a pipe is 75 years. And what we found is that we were on basically a 200-year plan. So you can imagine, not only are we not catching up, we continue to fall behind, and not at an insignificant rate, but a pretty significant one, which is why we had to do something about it. So we talked about it, you know, and we said, what are we going to do this? Because again, going back to our mission and vision, we can't not do something about it. So we said, all right, what is a plan that is going to get us back on track within a reasonable amount of time? And by reasonable, we're talking 20 years. It's a 20-year plan. And if you take the 95, we talked about how there's 95 miles of pipe in the ground. For us to get on a 75-year plan, we need to, and you know, we're going to get into some numbers here, but we need to get at least, if we want to break even, it's 1.27. Let's call it 1.25 miles of pipe. But if we're going to get ahead, we have to do more than that. And so the only way to do that is to actually ramp it up over time. And you can kind of see, you know, it goes up kind of like a pyramid and it comes back down. And there's a couple different reasons why we did it this way. Number one is we need to build up our reserves, our cash basically, to be able to pay for this, because we can't just go out there and pay for it today. We got to actually build it up. And number two, as a matter of logistics, you know, this community, you know, this district prides itself in being able to replace pipeline with minimal impact to the community. For example, there's a pipeline in Orange that we just deferred because it would impact Monte Vista Elementary too much, right? So this is a plan that we came up with, right? So we did this, and we made some difficult decisions. I mentioned before that a lot of infrastructure had been deferred in the past because of the sensitivity to the financial impact on customers. But you know, back in 2020, after the completion of the study, which by the way, it's called the Infrastructure Funding and Reliability Plan, and it's kind of a mouthful, so we call it the roadmap. But in order to realize that roadmap, we actually raised rates by a pretty significant amount, right? It was, right now we're in the second year of a 3-year rate schedule of 8% each year. We're looking at, I believe, 7% for the next 3 years after that and 6% for 3 years after that. These are difficult decisions. These are difficult messages to share with the community, but we did the right thing. The thing is, since then, the goalposts have moved, right? I think it almost goes without saying what's happened, because all of us, whether it's in our households or if we own businesses or in our own workplaces, we understand what's happened in the last couple of years. It's been a confluence of just everything. We had basically uncontrolled, unbridled inflation. We had a pandemic. We had supply chain shortages, labor shortages, significant increases in costs. And so that all trickles down. And what's going on is that we're not able to do as much. The dollar just doesn't go as far, right? So that's a challenge. We talked about the opportunities. And so what comes out of this challenge is it's an opportunity. And let's remember our mission and vision again, a big piece of which is infrastructure reliability. And Ned mentioned an implicit promise that we make to the community, and we wouldn't be fulfilling our promise to you of planning for the future and making sure there's infrastructure reliability if we didn't address this issue, right? And also, if water isn't available for properties, these properties, you can imagine their usefulness and ultimately their value declines. And it's something, the availability of water, especially until now, because pipelines have resided within their useful life of 75 years, is something that it's easy to take for granted. But we don't want to be in a situation where our community can't access water, right? The properties can't access water. So again, none of these things should happen, right? And this is where we're coming from when proposing a dedicated source of funding for pipelines through the property tax rule. There's also an opportunity that's presented here, and that's revenue stability. So much of the district's revenue is tied to water sales, but a lot of how water is used is left to Mother Nature. And the reliability of our system, the availability of water to properties, they shouldn't be tied to variables like precipitation and temperature, things that are completely out of our control. Supporting our finances with a fixed, dependable revenue stream means we can avoid the goalposts that we talked about, the goalposts that move, like they've moved over the last couple of years, and as they have during the past drought cycles. So let's talk about the plan for the future. This is the same schedule that we had looked at before, just as a reminder in terms of where we started from. And this was 2019, 2020. And if you look at the bottom table there, this is just so we can put into clear focus what kind of numbers we're talking about. And the cost here is $3.3 million to $7.6 million in pipelines only. This is the plan that was approved by the board during the budget season in 2021. And when you look at the linear feet, that's going to be more than 1.25 miles, because now we're starting to catch up. And here's that same table again here, and the reason is so that we can compare against this next table. So when those goalposts move, right, when we have the pandemic, the supply chain shortages, the massive inflation, all of that stuff, the conservation, I forgot to mention, we're coming out the tail end of a historic drought, and water sales fell on top of that. So in November of 2022, staff and the board, we basically came back to the drawing board and said, look, we can't continue with the roadmap plan as we had originally devised in 2019, because if we do that, we're just going to run ourselves in the ground and be insolvent. And it's like being in between a rock and a hard place. We can't do that either, right? So we had to recalibrate and said, what are we going to do? So if you look at that bottom table there, the one in green, and you look at the bottom line there in miles, the cost goes down, and of course, the associated number of linear feet, the miles goes down with it. And if you look at those numbers, remember that number 1.27 or 1.25 miles, we have to meet that. We have to at least meet that just to not fall more behind than we are now. And when you look at those numbers, it's 1.1, 1.02, 0.74, and we're definitely not meeting our mission here, right? So that's where we are, and that's where we are, and that's why we are talking about an additional source of revenue. Again, it would be a charge on the property roll. And when we do that, we have to come up with a defensible reason for how we come up with that charge, right? And so here's that same table here, it's in green. And what we did was we said, okay, we have three options. We can say we're gonna do something about it. We can say we're gonna do something more about it, or we can say we're just gonna solve the problem. And the reason why we have three is because, and this is kind of where the community comes in too, in terms of how important is this issue to you. We basically took the first 3 years and said, what is the average cost of that between 2023 to 2025? And the cost of pipeline replacement over those 3 years is $2.7 million. If we do it over 4-year average, because we're ramping up, the number's gonna naturally go up, it's about $3.5 million. And if we do 5 years, it's gonna be $4 million. These are not insignificant numbers, but these are the numbers. Okay, so let's go ahead and look at the plan. And we have 3 plans, but let's just start with the status quo. We talk about, and there's 2 lines here, and the red and the red and the black. And what we need to keep in mind here is the balance between financial impact versus actually getting ahead in terms of our deferred infrastructure and making it reliable, making our pipelines reliable, right? So if we were to move ahead with even the haircut scenario, I'll call it, which is that green table, which is the one where we had to scale back our plan. If we were to do even that today with our current finances, we'd basically run out of money by 2026. Obviously not an option. That's a non-negotiable, right? At this point, hopefully we can understand that not doing something about the infrastructure is also not a plan. That's not part of the plan. But we have to start somewhere, and that's why we want to talk about the status quo. So let's move on to solutions. Here we're going to look at, this is the baseline, kind of the 3-year, the lower plan, if you will. And if you look at the red and black lines, now at least we're not running into the ground, we're not running out of money by 2026, but there's still quite a bit of gap there. And I want to pause here to talk about kind of why it's important that those 2 lines are closer to each other. And it actually has to do with the infrastructure itself, with the pipelines themselves. And I think it's a good time to talk about the difference between proactive and reactive maintenance. I'm sure many of you in the community in recent memory can remember there was a massive break on Pennsylvania Avenue a couple years ago. We recently had one on Ocean View. When these things happen, other than the actual interruption of service and the debris and everything, all that stuff happening, the noise, there's a huge cost differential. It's estimated that at minimum the cost to repair something during an emergency is at least 3 times, if not 5, 7, 10 times more. And the reason for that is because you can imagine, it's usually, these things always happen at 2 a.m. for some reason, but it's the middle of the night, you got to mobilize a crew. Contractors, we're at their mercy, basically. We have to stop the leak. If you can kind of visualize with me, sometimes these pressures can get, 100 PSI or more. Sometimes it takes hours just to get the clamp on, just to stop the water from spraying everywhere in the first place. It's very difficult, right? You have sinkholes, cavitation, all manner of things. And so we really, really want to get ahead of that. And in a sense, for every dollar that we put in, we're actually almost getting out 2 or 3 or more dollars, right? So just wanted to explain that. But that's the 3-year plan. And there it is highlighted there. Okay, so let's move on to the 4-year plan. And you can see right off the bat here, so first of all, that black line, it's not dipping below 0. That's a good sign. It's getting closer to the red line, and that's very good. But again, the most important thing here is we try to get ahead of this as much as we can, right? Even if we do this, we're still going to have main breaks, right? It's going to happen. The idea is we want to drastically reduce the number of those kind of main breaks going into the future. All right, and so there's a 4-year plan that's highlighted at $3.5 million. And let's move on to the 5-year plan. So here, this is where we start seeing that black line actually start to approximate that red line, right? This is financial health, this is infrastructure health, and this is health for your property, our community, emergency response, things like that. And there it is highlighted there, the 5-year average at $4 million. So, okay, $64,000 question. How does this affect me? This is probably why you came here, right? To understand this and provide input. So here you see a table, it's called meter ratios. And really what this does is it kind of breaks down what the cost, or it differentiates between different meter sizes. Now, this community is, for the most part, it's residential. And the vast majority of meters are 3/4 inch meters. So you can see there about 7,000 out of the 8,200 water service connections we have are 3/4 inch. The 1-inch ones, they're usually the newer properties. They're usually a lot bigger. Usually the contractor or the person building the home said, I want a private fire line. And then when you have the 1.5, 2-inch, these are the big HOAs, the condominium complexes. And then the 3 and 4-inch ones are the big institutional meters, like the Caltrans, maybe some schools, things like that. Okay, but by and large, we're talking about this 3/4 inch one. And you may wonder, what is AWWA? What are these, what are these numbers here? So AWWA, it's the preeminent association in the country. It's American Water Works Association, and they have these best practices. And so when financial considerations are developed, when analyses are developed, these are the ratios that are used by and large throughout the nation. But the reason why these ratios matter is because it's the proportionate share of whichever plan we go with. So, and by the way, staff is going to recommend to the board the greater option, the $4 million option, because we feel that that is a responsible thing to do. And when you look at that, you can see highlighted here, that translates to, so if you were to divide $4 million amongst all of the meters, and then you kind of allocate them according to these ratios, for the vast majority of customers, for the 3, 4, and 5-year plan, we're talking about a range on your property tax bill annually between $273.62 all the way up to $404.30. So how is this going to appear on my property tax bill? So we have a couple of samples of property tax bills from our community. In this case, this is actually one of our employees, which was kind enough to provide for us. And so most people, when they pay their property tax bill these days, they just kind of go onto the county website and pay it. They don't see all this detail. But if you still get this in the mail and you like to look at it, this is what it looks like. You just want to take a few seconds to go over the parts of it. But and this property here, so in our community, last I checked, the median assessed value, or kind of the market value that it's assessed based on, is about 1.1, 1.2, 1.3. So let's just say about $1.2 million. So this is a little bit less than that, right? You can see the assessed values at the bottom. There's about 800,000. And there's two major categories other than the actual property tax for your specific property. There's two categories. One is voted indebtedness. And usually that's things like schools. Schools is the most, and people will vote on these, right? This community voted on community colleges and the Unified School District at some point. And so you see those charges there. If you look below that, there's direct assessments. And this is a category that we're proposing to put it on. You can see right off the bat, we would be the biggest charge on there. We also believe that water is probably one of the most important things that you could have. You see some other water-related things there. Those are not related to Crescenta Valley. They have to do with stormwater. They have to do with metropolitan and things like that. But here you can really see exactly what it would look like for you. So let's move on to this other one. And this one is actually my friend who lives in the district, and I apologize for kind of the fuzzy resolution. So he's doing well for himself. The assessed value for his property is $2.3 million, and the resultant property tax bill is $26,000, but it's a similar setup. So certain things are a percentage of the actual assessed value. Certain things are just fixed charges. So in our case, for example, what we would propose is not a percentage of the property. It's just, it'd be a fixed amount for each property. Okay, and if there are any questions about this, we can certainly talk about this during our Q&A. So we're nearing the conclusion of my presentation, and thank you for bearing with. But let's just review some next steps. So we have our talk today. We're going to be soliciting your opinion, your input, perhaps some ideas on how to move forward. We're going to be presenting it to the board on April 11th, along with revenue requirements. And by the way, revenue requirements, that's just another way of saying, do we want that, the lower, the medium, or the higher option? Like I said, staff will be presenting the $4 million option, and a review draft of the Prop 218. Prop 218, that's a law that was passed in the 90s, and it has to do with anytime we're going to raise the rates or something like that, then we need to put it before the constituents so that they have an opportunity to weigh in on that. We're going to send the Prop 218 notices, if the board approves, on the 25th, and then the public hearing as of now is scheduled for June 13th after the requisite 45-day waiting period. I want to go back to this bullet here that was skipped called Develop Bill Assistance Program. So for those of you who may not be aware, the district has actually maintained what's called a low-income assistance program for a while. And what that is for people whose incomes qualify, the district actually pays for 20% of the bill, both the water and the wastewater. Now, we've had staff and the board, we've had a number of discussions on this property tax charge over the last several months. But one of the ideas, and just sneak peek into how governance works, you have the boards, but you also have these committees where we can have more in-depth workshops. And the committee members in the finance committee, one of their ideas was, well, if we're going to do this, and we can make sure that we're financially resilient, we can make sure that we're doing the right thing for the community, upholding our promise to make sure we can deliver water to the properties. What else can we do, right? And so the idea on the table now, and we're actively researching and analyzing this as we speak, is to transition the low-income discount program to just a more general bill assistance program. So it's one thing if you're like my friend whose bill is $26,000, might not notice it as much, $400. But if you're somebody whose property's been in the family for 20, 30 years, and your property tax bill is, let's say, $2,000, then $400, that's a pretty good chunk of your entire property tax bill. What do you do with that? So in order to do that, there's a couple ideas on the table. We can either expand the budget, the program itself, for a bill assistance program. We can increase the income limit so that more people can apply and qualify. We can actually increase the amount that we assist with from 20% to something higher than that. And so we're looking at county roll data. We basically have everybody's assessed values to see, okay, how many of these bills fall within 10,000 or 5,000 or whatever the case may be, so that we can right-size a program and really work with the community on this. So that concludes my end of the presentation. I'm going to turn it over to Justin here. Thank you for coming here today. Like I said, all of us here are very passionate about this. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, James. I really appreciate that, and I know we all do. So it is now time to go into our Q&A. Couple of notes. We want to make sure that everyone's respectful, and we want to make sure we give everybody a chance to speak. So please limit yourself to one question before everyone has an opportunity, and then we'll come back around if you have additional questions. Also, let's keep the discussion on the issues we've discussed today. If you have an item on another issue related to the water district that you want to touch on, we're going to share that contact information again, so you'll be able to reach out to staff and get that question addressed. The way we're going to do the Q&A, we're going to do it one of two ways. You can raise your hand and we will recognize you to unmute yourself. Or if you're more comfortable and you want to put that in the Q&A function, we'll be monitoring that through the Q&A period. So go ahead and start raising your hands and start putting those questions into chat. And we've got our panel up here ready to ask questions. And Christy is going to help me traffic manage the questions and get those to the right place. Christy, we have a question to get us started from Roger Kahn. And Roger says a charge based on usage would seem more fair than a charge based on meter diameter, so that those who use more would pay more. Would we like to address that?
I think James will take that question.
Hey, do you mind repeating that question for me, Justin?
Yeah, Roger says a charge based on usage would seem more fair than a charge based on meter diameter, so that if you use more, you pay more.
Oh, I see. Okay, so thank you for that question. I can take that one, and I'll try to keep it simpler. And by the way, for all these questions, we're always here. We love having conversations. There's actually a number of participants here that have taken advantage of that option, and we've had a series of conversations. But to get to your question, I agree. There should be a usage component, and that's why there is still the rate component where it is based on the usage. So, but I want to provide a little more context in terms of those differences in meter sizes and the ratios. And it's kind of like, so what we're paying for there and why AWWA uses those ratios, it has to do with peak load and how the system is designed to accommodate needs, basically. What does that mean? Really, it's, okay, so let's say I have a 3/4 inch meter versus I have a 1 inch meter. And one of the reasons for that is because, let's say my property is bigger, my lot's bigger, maybe I want fire protection, whatever the case may be. Then I'm going to have access to more. And so an analogy I like to think about is kind of broadband internet access, right? So we can pay for, I don't really pay attention to it, but let's just say you can pay for 10 megabytes per second versus 50 megabytes per second. And if you're paying for that bigger line, that bigger pipeline, literally, right? It's fiber, but still pipeline basically. Then you have that option. Now, whether you want to, download 10 movies at the same time or just use that bandwidth to send emails, it's still, the system is still designed for that load. And in this case, we're talking about water being delivered to that property and being able to serve that function. So hopefully that answers your question. And if not, or you'd like to speak further again, please contact.
Thank you, James. Another couple of questions from our Q&A function. One person says, is there any impact on the bi-monthly water bill or just the property tax roll?
I'll take that as well. So at the moment, there's no impact on the bi-monthly bill. This would be in addition to that. And I don't want to make any kind of promises, but the vision is at some point, because one of the components of this is not only actually addressing the infrastructure itself, it's also revenue stability, fiscal stability, and to a large extent fiscal responsibility, because it allows us to use the money more efficiently. So if we find ourselves one day in a place where we can actually lower the rates on the bill side, then that's certainly something that the board would consider. Thank you.
Thank you, James. A few more questions coming in from the chat function. Solomon Lee asks, have you applied or looked at applying for federal funds? The recent infrastructure bill had funds available. This questioner says there was $50 billion available for water infrastructure. So have you looked at that?
Okay, I'm gonna kick this off, and then I'm gonna send this over to Brooke. So thank you for the question, Solomon. We have looked into this. One of the difficulties with our community is that when you look at the census, now this is an average situation. We're not talking about individuals because everybody's story is different. But when you look at the census, we're actually a very affluent area, basically. And so when that happens, just the criteria for applying for federal grants and things like that, it really narrows that universe just immediately right off the bat. So it makes it difficult. In my opinion, I think we've done an amazing job of pursuing what is still available. We have the generators that we talked about. Some of those will be paid through federal funds. We
we administered a bill forgiveness program during the pandemic that trickled from the federal government to the state down to us, and then we're still administering it actually. There's all types of grants and things like that we do pursue, and our hit rate, given our demographics, is actually pretty high, and we're proud of that. But I know Brooke is aware of other opportunities. So Brooke, do you want to maybe expound on that a little?
Yeah, I did want to make just a couple mentions. We did participate in a local hazardous mitigation plan or program not too long ago with the state, which there was 4 projects that kind of came out of that study, and that the money that was mentioned earlier is part of the reason that several of those projects have been greenlit. So we do now have an 1.5 and 2-inch meter replacement program that is kind of directly associated with that that additional funding. Otherwise, we are applying to a recycled water grant fund a project, and we're always looking for new ways to get access to federal grant funding that is appropriate for our area. But I will kind of echo what James was saying. Our demographics sometimes exclude us from federal dollars.
Thank you, Brooke. And a follow-up from Roger, just sort of re-advocating his advocacy that the charge be based on water usage, to be fair. And I think this is a good opportunity, Roger. James mentioned the process that this is going to go through. So we're having the meetings today, but there will also be a process that will continue to be public, including a public hearing that'll be at the board level. And those comments should also get included in that public hearing process. And the district will be sharing information on how you can participate and let your voice be heard during that process.
And Justin, let me just jump in here for a second. So Roger, thank you for that follow-up. Yeah, certainly you can get involved there. I think a more impactful time to get involved with respect to that discussion is when we start looking at our rates again. It's a best practice for us to look at our rates every 5 years, and we'll be coming due in about a year and a half or so. And that's going to be a long discussion. You're going to see a lot of outreach regarding inviting the public to be part of that. So please be sure to contact us at that time.
And then forgive me if I'm wrong, also speaking out of turn here, but kind of a large portion of this is based on the idea that during heavy years of conservation, when our variability kind of goes down and that charge drops, that if we still relied on quantity-based measures, we would still be kind of in the same position when heavy conservation hits. So what we're trying to do is help our fixed charges on it, so we have more reliability during years of heavy use.
Thank you, Brooke. Do we have other folks who want to ask a question, either by raising your hand and asking it verbally, or placing it in the Q&A, and we'll address it. So who else has a question they want to jump in with? All right, here we've got another one from the Q&A. Will you include a specific expiration date on the property tax assessment? I guess this question is saying how long is this charge going to be in effect?
I can take that one too. So if you look at our plan, which is a 20-year plan, then you can imagine that the funding is going to be needed for the foreseeable future. And so the plan would be to renew it each year. And there's a process in place that basically stipulates that the board intimate that. And I think we have to actually notice enough people and things like that. But as of now, that is a plan so that we can meet the mission and vision. Thank you for the question.
Thank you, James. Other questions from our attendees? Thank you for the really good questions and for the good participation today. If we don't have any further questions today, again, there are going to be more opportunities to engage on this issue, and you as customers are going to continue to get information sent to you on how you can participate. If we don't have any further questions, what I'd like to do is invite Nim and or James to provide any closing remarks or comments that you two would like to make.
Sure, I'll just kick it off. Again, I just want to thank the public for participating.
As James mentioned, it's something that we are all passionate about. You know, public service is something that we decided to pursue. It's part of our professional journeys, and it's where we are today. And it's really important for us to serve this community in the most effective and cost-efficient manner. For those who have been following the board and what we've been doing in our strategic plan over the last 3 years, we've done everything we can to reduce costs. We've cut our workforce down. We're doing more with less. And now we're talking about huge infrastructure investments that are going to be able to give us some reliability out in the future. And so this is what this discussion is about. And we continue to invite the public's comments and input on this. And we want you to come to our board meetings. And this is the first step, again, in what we call our new vision. Secure sustainable water supplies, ensure infrastructure reliability, while furthering our commitment to accountability, transparency, and cost effectiveness. So thanks again on behalf of the district, its employees and board members. Thank you very much for spending time with us today.
And I just wanted to follow up, and whatever brought you here today, whether it was my newspaper ad, word of mouth, or email, please continue to watch for more information from the district. On our website front page at the bottom, you can sign up for email notifications and be notified of whatever your interest is, general interest meeting, constructions, updates. Further information will be distributed the same way through the CV Weekly newspaper and through email blasts. The public hearing notification will be mailed directly to every single customer. But again, please participate in any of these meetings, including our board meetings, which are the second and fourth Tuesday of each month and are available for you to attend virtually.
Thank you, Christy. Anything else from our panelists before we close? And to our Zoom tech, can we put up the contact slide for the district? We had one last minute question come in on leak detection. I would encourage you to send that question to customer service at CVWD and we'll get that, CVWD.com, and we'll get that answered. And we thank you again for everyone who has participated today, and we'll conclude today's meeting.
Thank you.
And everybody.